we are here with Black Ops 3 again. This time we're looking at the multiplayer. And we've got David and Dan here to walk us through it. So, we've heard that there are basically 3 new huge additions to Black Ops 3. Let's start with the Specialist.
That's appropriate somehow.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we brought 3 major things to the show, and Specialist is one of the ones that Dan and I have been working very hard on. At a very macro level, Specialists are these playable characters that you pick in multiplayer. They have names, they have personalities, they have backstories, and they all have this archetypal kind of vibe to them. Like, there's one called Ruin, and he's the rusher, right? So he has a weapon called the Grab Spikes, and his ability is Overdrive, which lets him run faster. And the Specialists really are about sort of getting really involved in the game story and the fiction. It's really fun to hear their voices.
Yeah, and I think, you know, once people start to get familiar with the Specialists, the more they play with them, they actually start to adapt their play styles to the different abilities and the kind of the persona that Specialist embodies. That's one of the things that's coolest. The coolest part about it to me is seeing how you actually kind of play the style of how that's the theme of that Specialist.
So with that, if you have to learn a lot more, there's sounds like more intricacies you have to get through. Does that change the learning curve? So it makes it a little bit steeper, or
I think it just extends it. It gives you so much more to discover and engage with as you play the game longer. I also think it's been a lot of fun to see how when you actually organize as a team around Specialists and everyone picks their roles, the battle kind of unfolds differently and people play a different way, and it's very competitive.
You would think that this would be something that's very difficult to adopt to, and we actually thought about that a lot. It's very accessible to people. It's not very hard. It's what you'd expect from a Trearch Call of Duty game. We make a big HUD element, you power it up, give you a notification, you hit 2 bumpers, and you're off and running. We do not make this complex.
All right, I'm gonna be the internet for a second.
I like the internet.
All right.
Go on, internet.
You're not gonna like this.
All right,
The internet.
Brace yourself.
Okay, so here's the internet. You're just ripping off Destiny.
Look, I appreciate that. We have take influence and inspiration from lots of different places, lots of different games. We take inspiration from movies. We take inspiration from other games. We take inspirations from ourselves, from the team. A lot of stuff comes from the team that we have to sort through. I mean, there's a laundry list of places where you're influenced by, right? So if you are in anybody's shoes as a dev, you're just really trying to go against what your core mission for the game is. In this case, we had 2 really guiding principles. 1, we wanted the game to have a guns-up philosophy. We wanted you to get and stay engaged in the fight. So even with all the new combat mechanics and the Specialists, it's about staying in the fight. It's about risk and reward. The other side of that is winding the combat loop tight. We really want players to have those brief spikes of power so that everybody gets to participate in it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, David.
Well, on the subject of staying in the fight, I've actually heard some people say that Black Ops 3 is sort of not necessarily a step back, but a different flavor than maybe Advanced Warfare, where people are just flying all over the place, spinning around, dashing all over the place. Your combat movement has its own flavor, but it's a little more traditional, maybe isn't the right word, but a little more focused, just
grounded.
Shit. Yeah.
I mean, we started the development of the movement system from the very beginning of the Black Ops 3 development cycle. It was one of the first things that we did coming off of Black Ops 2, and we were building off of the Black Ops 2, the tightness of the controls, the feeling of the weapons, the balance, the way the players move through the environment, and we really wanted players to evolve from a familiar place with Black Ops 2 into Black Ops 3. It's much, for us, it's about the finesse. It's about giving players much more command over their interaction with the environment. We want to basically remove the barriers, anything that's going to slow down the combat by how you move through the space of the maps. We want players to decide themselves how they want to pace their movement through the game, not have the game decide that for you. So it's really about finesse, control, power, fluidity, and all of the movements that we've built have been designed to chain together. So you can actually connect one movement to another, no matter what combination you've done. One of the things that David talked about, the guns up philosophy, we also had a guiding principle of omnidirectional movement and omnidirectional control. So no matter what direction you're moving, you're going to be fluidly moving in the same direction through whatever movement you do. So if you're going to mantle over an obstacle or a piece of cover, you can do that forward, sideways, backwards. Keep your gun up, keep your gun in the fight the entire time.
How do you mantle backward? Like reach up and flip back?
You're a super soldier, man.
They do a lot of yoga.
I guess so, yeah. Got little mechanical hands in your backpack?
We make a lot of animations, and we keep making them until we get it right.
So this is, you guys, you have a game. This is the first year that you're on a 3-year cycle for. This is the first game for them.
Yeah, this is the first.
Wow,
this is the
my
first.
words.
No, I know what you're trying to say. This is
Thank
the first.
you.
It's the
He
first
speaks
game.
Ashley.
It's the first game at Trearch that we've worked on a 3-year cycle for a Call of Duty game, and that extra year has been phenomenal for us. It allowed us to take some big risks and change something fundamental like the movement system, and then adapt our map development process to build those maps from the ground up for the movement system. It allowed us to overhaul our graphics technology, many of the tools and tech of our engine. We basically rebuilt the AI system for the campaign from the ground up. It also allowed us creatively to explore much deeper the narrative of our game. We spent a lot of time actually building out the universe of this game, building out the world fiction, what's happening, what's the technology of our time period, what are the political alliances of our time period, what's the military operations, what do they look like in the future. So all of that was really built with a very kind of deep and rich backstory.
This is not a game that we could have made without the extra first year of development, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, with a franchise like Call of Duty, where there are iterations every year, it seems like there's a lot of pressure to always be adding stuff, and there's not a lot of opportunity to take stuff away, or gamers get really upset. I was gonna ask, like, how you keep coming up with new stuff, but it seems like you have no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not true. In fact, Dan and I actually, in the very first days of the development, what we'll do is take apart entire sections of the game just to challenge the idea that we have to have it because we've had it before. So you'll actually play the game in the first year, and it won't have major game systems that you might expect to have. And that's the only way to truly understand what's important to the new game that you're making.
So what would you say you stripped out this time and said, we don't need this anymore, we're going in a fully different direction?
In the beginning, we actually took all of our creative class content out of the game. Everything, score streaks, creative class, everything was out of the game to focus on movement. We challenged ourselves to say, what are these things? Are they important? Through that process, we started to develop new ideas. That's how a lot of the specialist, the weaponry that we have and some of the gadgets and mechanics that we've brought into the game came out of just that exploration of not having anything in the game. We thought about them differently, thought about content differently, thought about gameplay mechanics differently. And through that process, a lot of stuff got cut, but a lot of stuff came in that was new and we wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, when people get their hands on the game, they're going to realize, like, where did this perk go? Why aren't you doing this particular attachment anymore? And, there's hundreds of pieces of content in the game. Each one of them needs to get looked at very carefully, studied, be sure it's still the right thing to do, make sure it's in the right system, make sure it fits in the right power band.
Well, you're actually giving people the power to create their own content, right? So like last year's Advanced Warfare, like you could have new knee pads and stuff like that, but you guys are going a little more fundamental with it.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. This is actually really important to both Dan and I. We talk about it in terms of big, chunky, meaty choices, right? So that's what the specialists are, and their customization is very built around that. This is about the head. It's about the body. It's not about smaller pieces of the character. But then really for the gunsmith and the paint shop, there you have a lot of customization there. You could actually paint the gun on the back side, build whatever kind of designs that you want, do all three sides, 64 layers per side, colors, shapes, gradients, materials, all in an editor that you use, and then you can show that off to your friends.
So we can get like guns with unicorns on them, that's a thing we can do?
You can definitely make a unicorn gun. In fact, I've seen one made.
It'll definitely be unicorns, knowing the internet.
Vaughn actually rocks a unicorn gun. I've seen him.
Definitely unicorns. It won't be anything else, knowing the internet.
So this is actually shareable online, which means you guys probably have to moderate it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of experience here. Fans of Black Ops 2 remember the emblem editor.
The emblems, yeah.
We did that, introduced it in Black Ops 1. I think we did 12 layers Black Ops 1, and then Black Ops 2, we had 32 layers. And the things that the community made out of 32 layers and basic shapes with the emblem editor was insane. I mean, none of us at the development studio have actually ever been able to make anything that comes even close to things that we see coming out of the community. So we doubled that. It's 64 layers on 3 sides of your gun, plus materials like Vaughn talked about. You can make metals. You can use metals for your layers, and gradients, opacity control. It's crazy.
Look, there's a live ops team. We're going to manage this stuff the way you'd expect us to manage it.
Sure.
It's just how it works. We know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that job like? I mean, not that that's necessarily intrinsically related
the moderating
to Black Ops 3,
part?
but yeah, I imagine some guy who spends 8 days or 8 hours a day looking at crudely drawn genitalia.
Yeah.
I would
Guys
like
and
to
gals,
meet that
yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Guys and gals who have to do that.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry.
And it's important. It's an important part of what we do. We actually, when the game's done, I always joke with the team, like the game came out, we're done. It's November 6th of this year, the game's done. Everybody in the studio's like, yay, we're done. I'm like, no, that's the halfway point, right? So you're only halfway done.
We totally flip gears. Once the game's out, the game basically, the team switches to live ops mode, and we're always looking for opportunities to still continue to dial in based on community feedback, tune weapons, tune content, add content post-launch. It's just a different kind of frame of mind, and you are in many ways cultivating this sort of community that you've built out of your game, and you're watching it, you're seeing what they're doing, you're adapting to it, you're making sure that the majority of players are having the best experience they possibly can.
Yeah, and having the kind of highly engaged community that Call of Duty has, it seems like it can be a double-edged sword sometimes. Like, as you get that feedback, and people are really, really passionate, and that Call of Duty is their life. And then on the other hand, sometimes they get a little bit carried away with expecting things to go exactly the way that they individually want. I'm like, how do you guys, like, do you guys have to balance, do you just do what your vision is, or do you have to balance like what you guys really want to do with what with what the internet right there is demanding?
We hate you, by the way. My scope is gone. How dare you?
Look, I get it. I mean, you know, we have a word for this. I mean, social media is a great way to stay engaged with fans. We're very engaged on the channels, and not just Twitter, not just Facebook, not just YouTube, not just Instagram, not just Reddit. I mean, the list goes on. And we actually use that as a source to help us understand, but we always balance this against the reality. You cannot make games based on what social media has to say about the games. You have to have a vision for the game, you have to have design goals, and you have to stick to them. But it would be absurd to completely ignore that world, to not pay attention, to not use that information, and then bring it back, look at the data to figure out what's the truth. Sometimes it's right. Sometimes we learn about things there first. Then we take that information back, we compare it with our own experiences as developers and our experience, but also with what the data says. We're very analytics driven. We have a very interesting kind of mechanical system where we're collecting data about the game, measuring performance, measuring score per minute, measuring kill-death ratio, using all of these things to help us figure out what the right decision is. So social media might point you in a particular direction, but we watch a lot of YouTube videos, no doubt about it.
But also, the analytics that you get, sometimes the statistics are going to tell a very different story than what the vocal minority on social media says, right?
Yeah, they tell us, and when they tell a different story, then we have to, you know, move from that. We have to not do that.
Are there any, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's always two sides to any story. There's the perception side, the emotional response that players have, and then there's the scientific side, the stats, the statistics of the data that shows how they're actually using certain content or mechanics. And it's not like it's something that only happens once the game comes out. Our own development team has the same phenomenon. We listen to people get angry about overpowered weapons in our playtests, and we playtest every day, and we have very opinionated developers on our team. So you can imagine that it's just sort of giving us a preview, a sneak preview.
Warming you up, stretching out, doing some toe touches. Yeah.
And it's
doing your yoga so you can aim backwards.
You know, we treat the development team the same way. It's like listen and understand what the emotional response is, understand the perception side of it. Then you pull up the stats and you try to reconcile why is the stats telling one story and why is the person feeling a different way. And so you have to, you know, it's a mix of art and science.
Does Black Ops 3 have any examples of that kind of like changes that you've made based off that combination of feedback?
Yeah, I could dig. You know, I dig so deep in this rabbit hole that I never come back out. But the truth is, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about sort of the things like the target finder from Black Ops 2, very polarizing feature, statistically not overpowered. I promise you, the target finder in Black Ops 2 was statistically not overpowered as a scope, not in Black Ops 3. Right? Even though it wasn't overpowered, different ways of approaching the same mechanic. That's a literal, actual example of something that's very polarizing. And there are other mechanics in the game that have been polarizing over the years. So we work with those things, right? We talk about them in terms of the community perception of what we call clutch perks, things that people think that they have to have. And we will make decisions about those things sometimes in the way where the data doesn't support that decision, that they're overpowered or bad or do something bad to the game, because we understand the perception level too. So we don't ignore that. There is an emotional connectedness that people have to a game, and you know, if we just did everything black and white, you're not really exploring the whole range. It is a balancing act. There's a yin and a yang with Dan, and that's how we handle that balance.
So going back to specifically to Black Ops 3, you
I
guys.
never have emotional responses to things.
Yeah. By the way, that was excessively diplomatic. That was wonderful. I've never heard somebody be so respectful to people that say the worst things in the world, myself included. But you guys mentioned that you can combine specialist abilities in a way that's maybe more useful than the sum of their parts. What are some specific examples of that?
Well, I think Vaughn gave the example of Ruin as kind of a rusher. If you can imagine, if you have a team that's comprised of players that take different roles in a competitive playing field, you might have a guy whose job it is to really rush objectives. But if you had a team full of guys who are rushers, you would not be competitive field. You've got to have a balance, and you got to have some tactics and some strategy in play with how you employ them across your team.
Even within the specialist itself, you could take somebody like Outrider, and her archetype is sort of sniper-ish and hunter-like. And you actually go in and you can amplify that with the perks. You can take the stealth perks, you can take the tracking perk. You can kind of stack up with stuff that's in pick 10 to kind of further amplify that type and play style. And we think that's really a really fun extension of the specialist, merging it not just with what the specialist can do, but also the creative class pick 10 content, as well as the score streaks for that matter.
Have you guys reworked the score streaks at all, or is it more or less what we've come to expect?
So the score streak system is going to be very familiar to players of Black Ops 2. Vaughn kind of touched on this a little earlier, but we have our sensibilities are we like very big, chunky kind of decisions that we want players to make, and we like to give players hard decisions. I mean, decisions shouldn't be easy if you're talking about how you play the game. You want to give them hard decisions. You want to make them make sacrifices to get some kind of power. And with the score streak system, it's no different. We want everything to have a very unique role, very defined in its position on that score streak power band. And we want players to very easily identify what does this gameplay mechanic do, what's this content do, how do I counter it when I'm playing the game. So you don't want to have any kind of gray area, any confusion with that. We like just very big, meaty things.
The way we like to talk about it is we're not really big fans of nested systems. We want you to be able to go into the score streak menu, realize what the cost is to earn that score streak, know exactly what it does, pick the 3 and get back to playing, right? So that's why that score streak as a system is really pretty, but there is a lot of new scoring events that feed the system, and there's a ton of new score streaks. You saw the mothership in the video, amongst many others like the GI unit. So there's fun new gameplay content in that system as well.
Also new counters, new ways to counter them, and exciting kind of fun things that we
every score streak
from Black Ops 2.
Every score streak has some type of counter, which was part of the philosophy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for taking the time to talk to us a little bit more about multiplayer. Congratulations, everybody. You survived G3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for the invite.